Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Hi, everybody. This is Lois Sonstegard. Welcome to our podcast today with Marshall Goldsmith. I am so excited to have Marshall Goldsmith with us. He has been a mentor to me in many ways. His work has been just so meaningful to me as I've looked at what is it that's necessary in organizations. And he, as you already are aware, I'm sure, the number one thought leader in leadership globally, and has won numerous awards for being the number one executive coach around the world. So, Marshall, let me just give you a moment to introduce yourself the way you would like, and then we'll go from there.
Well, my name is Marshall. I'm from a small town called Valley Station, Kentucky. I went to school in Indiana. I got a PhD at UCLA. I was a college professor and dean when I was very, very young. Then for 42 years, I've done three things. I give talks or teach classes, and I travel all around the world speaking and teaching. Been to 102 countries. Then I write and edit books and articles. So I've written or edited 40 books, 3 big New York Times bestsellers, and I coach executives. So I'm the coach of the CEO of Ford and Pfizer and Glaxo and the World Bank. And you're in Minneapolis there. A couple of people I work with there, Dr. Noseworthy, who was head of the Mayo Clinic, and Hubert Joly, the CEO of Best Buy. So a couple of great clients of mine in your neighborhood. So I do those three things, and I've been married 44 years. My wife's a psychologist. My daughter's a professor at Vanderbilt. 2 grandchildren. My son's an entrepreneur in Austin. So life is good. Life is good.
You're amazing. So, Marshall, let's just take a moment to also tell our audience about your documentary film that is forthcoming. I think it's due to come out on 2020 in the fall. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And what inspired that? I had the privilege of being able to participate in that. And so just tell us a little bit about what brought that about.
Well, I was basically asked to do it, and it's just, to me, an opportunity to communicate with the world in a kind of legacy sense. For me, I really never thought about birthdays until I turned 70. And I recently became 70, and I really thought, what do I want to do the rest of my life? And focus on projects that I think have a good legacy opportunity. Pass it on, give it back to other people. And as you know, one of my projects is I'm adopting people, and I've adopted a couple hundred people from around the world and teach them all I know for free. And the only price is when they get old, they have to do the same thing. So I see the documentary as a way to try to communicate as much as I can to as many people as I can.
So that's part of what I want to talk about with you a little bit today is legacy. Because once you've been a leader and you've been at the top of the mountain, so to speak, the next really is legacy, isn't it?
It is. I've had the privilege of doing 8 programs at my home, either in New York or California, where I deal with retiring CEOs, or perhaps CEOs who've been the CEO, but now they're moving up to executive chairman or in a different role. And we talk about what are they going to do the rest of their lives, which is very, very challenging and important. I mentioned my friend Hubert Joly from Minneapolis. He was at our last program, and because he's moved up to executive chairman of Best Buy now, very, very successful. And now he's dealing with a very interesting existential thought of what am I going to do next?
And so, Marshall, when you work with leaders like that, I mean, there's a process, right? Mm-hmm. When do people begin to think about that, for example? And is there a process you take people through? You're one of probably the most, it has to be pragmatic because everything you do is very pragmatic. And you're very thoughtful about creating processes.
Well, I wrote a book called Succession, Are You Ready? It was published by Harvard Business Review. We talk about this, and we talk about letting go. And really, I encourage CEOs to think, at a pretty early stage about what I'd call their exit strategy. Because the role of a CEO, and it doesn't last as long as it used to. It's a rapidly changing world. And, you think you've made it to the top. Well, the distance between I made it to the top and it's time to leave is not very long.
Right.
So I really encourage them to think pretty early about, what do you want to do the rest of your life? What are you going to do forever? And what matters in life anyway? There are 5 basic things that are important. One is you have to have health. If you don't have health, and the rest of it's irrelevant. You need wealth, but only to a middle-class level of income anyway. And all these people have more money than they're ever going to spend. So wealth is pretty much a non-issue. Then you need to have great relationships with people you love. Don't get so focused on work that you ignore people who love you, which unfortunately happens too much. And then after that, what matters is happiness and meaning. By happiness, I refer to the process of life. I really love what I'm doing. And meaning is the outcome of what I'm doing is important to me. And you have to have both. Because what happens is a lot of people as they get older, they think about, well, I'm going to play golf or go on cruises or all that. Well, that's fine for about 3 months, but there's no meaning. And after that, your life starts to feel empty. On the other hand, if you do things that are meaningful but you don't enjoy, you're kind of a victim or a martyr, which is not good either. So you really need to find simultaneous happiness and meaning. And the challenge is no one can tell you what's going to make you happy. And no one can tell you what's meaningful for you. Those answers have to come from in here. And so that's what we spend time on. What's that mean to you? And then also, legacy is, what happens after you're not here?
Right.
What do you want to leave behind? And I've been working on a project, in fact, this last week with my friend Alan Mullally. Alan was the CEO of Ford, probably the most successful CEO in America in the last 20 years. And, he retired from Ford. And now he and I are working together on a book and a process called stakeholder-centered leadership. And the idea is how his material and my material, we can combine it and in a way that's transferable. So then when we're not here, other people can still use what we know.
Got it. So part of what I'm hearing you say is purpose and meaning. It's what you pass on, right?
Yes.
It's not something you develop all of a sudden at the end or as you begin to complete your career. It's really a process that you have to have begun much earlier on. So how do you go about that? I mean, that's huge.
Again, you don't have to think earlier on. It's helpful, though.
Yeah.
Because if you're not careful, what happens to a lot of executives is they fall off a cliff. You have this great career, and then all of a sudden, boom, you stop. And they just go into an existential void. It's not good. I'll give you a parallel example. The numbers on professional athletes are hideously bad. Pro basketball players, something like 50% bankruptcy in 5 years. Pro football players, 70% bankruptcy in 5 years. Huge divorce rates, depression, all kinds of problems because they achieve this fantastic success and then they fade away. Pau Gasol is a famous basketball player, played for the Lakers and several teams, and he is one of the people I've adopted. And he's thinking about this whole process, as is Venus Williams, who's now 40. And she's beginning to deal with this issue of, okay, now what? Because what happens is that if you don't do that, you end up with this unfortunate chance of facing this existential void, which is not good. Not good at all. Other people like actors and actresses, some positive stories like Sally Field, a great actress, winner of Academy Award, and she's really now more of a teacher, but very happy. Harry Kramer was CEO of Baxter. He's also now a teacher. He does a lot of philanthropy, just incredibly happy, fulfilled guy. So we've got some very positive case studies. So I'm writing on another, I'm always writing books. I'm writing one book with my friend Alan. I'm also writing another book called The Earned Life.
The what of life?
The Earned Life.
Got it.
And the essence of that book is, as we journey through life, coasting really doesn't work. living on past glory doesn't work. And kind of like every time I take a breath, it's a new me. And the question is, what is that new me doing to really earn a good life?
Marshall, I have to just intersect there. I was talking with two principal dancers that used to dance with the Paris Opera and then London. And one of the things they used to do every day was they'd stand in front of the mirror and they'd say, how did our bodies change through the night as we slept? How do we dance differently today? Unbelievable, which is what you're saying, right?
Every day. Yeah, that's
go ahead.
That's a great analogy.
So you were talking about every day you breathe, you take in a new breath, and it's different.
Yeah, it's a new you. And the extreme example of this would be my friend, Dr. Jim Kim. I mean, he was president of Partners in Health and president of Dartmouth College, head of the World Bank. Now he's in Global Investment Partners. And he's probably saved in his life literally tens of millions of dollars, taking perhaps 1 million people out of poverty. An amazing guy. You'd think, well, he could sit there and declare victory. Not so much. His attitude is, I'm earning my legacy every day. And if anyone you could say would look back on their life and say, well, I did enough, could be him. That's not the way he thinks, though. I think that's the reason he's very happy right now, is he's not living in the past. He's proud of the past.
Right.
He's not living in the past.
That's an incredible distinction. Wow. So, part of what I'm hearing you also say, Marshall, is in a way, as you look at what is it that you're going to do, living in the current, there's a sense of what you want to, there's a sense of looking back in your life. So you have a goal that you want to get to, and maybe it's not X number of dollars, but there's a goal. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, and goals are very useful because they give direction. The key to goals is, though, it's good to have goals.
Right.
And it's good to achieve. It's also good not to be fixated on results, because a lot of times results are outside of your control. And so all you can do is your best at any point in time, but don't get fixated on outcomes. For example, a golfer. A golfer hits, let's say, a bad shot. Well, they've got to take the next shot. If they're thinking about that previous shot, that just messes up their mind, and they hit a worse shot. Or they hit a good shot. If they're thinking about that great shot they just hit, that also messes up their mind. You need to play the ball that's in front of you, not the one that's behind you. So it's very important to try to achieve great results, yet not become fixated on the outcome of the results. Because at any point in time, all we can do is our best. So the key is, what am I doing now? Am I doing my best now? And that's basically all we can do in life.
So let me go back to where we began a little bit with process, and the process that you take leaders through, executives through that are building legacy. Is there a process you take them through in terms of being able to identify that?
Well, the first thing is my coaching process.
Right.
My coaching process is a very structured, as you said, formal process, and you get feedback from everyone around you that's confidential. You learn, what are you doing well and what do you need to improve? You pick the most important behavior to improve. You talk to your key stakeholders. You follow up on a regular basis and measure improvement. And then also everything you do is approved by the board of directors if you're the CEO. So everyone knows what's going on. And then you basically repeat the process. So that is a very transferable process. And from a personal legacy point of view, that process has been 3,000 people certified in the process. Tens of thousands of people use the process around the world, or some variation on it.
Right.
So I'm very happy with that because it is a process. Then in terms of this business of legacy, though, I say to CEOs, you have to first, who's your replacement? Be developing those people so when you leave, there's some great person to take your place. And also start thinking about, what do you want to do before you leave? Don't wait till after you leave. Thinking about what's next. You see, the CEOs and the leaders that have a good sense of what's coming in the future are happy to leave. The CEOs that don't have a sense, hang on. They stay too long. They can't let go because they're afraid of leaving. They're afraid because there's nothing out there. They don't want to play bad golf with old people in the country club. By the way, some of the stories I have from these people are hilarious. For example, Mike Duke was the CEO of Walmart. He was in my little meeting. So he said, I had this joke I told. And it was a clean joke, not offensive, and everyone loved it, ha, ha, ha. Then he said, I retired as the CEO of Walmart, and I told my little joke. Nobody laughed. I thought, well, they must be grumpy. I told it again to another group. Nobody laughed. He said, finally, my wife came to me. She goes, Mike, you idiot. Did you actually think that stupid joke was funny? They have to learn. Their jokes are really not that funny. Their comments aren't that profound. And the world doesn't hop up and down when they snap their fingers. And if you've been a CEO for a while, you're just used to people laughing at your jokes, doing whatever you say, acting like you're smart. And it takes a while to get over that stuff. One guy said, when did I learn I was no longer the CEO? When did it hit me? He said, I sat in the back seat of the car and it did not move.
That's funny. So what percentage of CEOs do you think don't get that?
A lot.
A lot meaning what?
A lot don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think more than 70%?
I don't know. I couldn't give you an answer because I don't, I have a degree in math, so I don't like to share numbers unless I have some pretty good idea.
Okay. But a lot.
A lot.
Which means there's a lot of people who retire and are unhappy, basically.
Yeah, that just fall into, well, that's what we're doing research about. I mean, I know the numbers for athletes. It's awful. I don't know the numbers for CEOs, but I do know the number of athletes is just terrible. And it's hard in any position like that. Another group that's really tough is combat veterans. Unfortunately, more combat veterans kill themselves after the war than die in the war. And it's very hard to leave that adrenaline-fueled, team-oriented, meaningful life and become a middle manager in a store somewhere. And a lot of them, unfortunately, kill themselves.
Yes, that is so true. And we don't have a lot of good data on what it is that impacts that. You look at the homelessness rate, and it's very, very sad. So what kind of advice do you have, Marshall, to emerging leaders who are moving up? They're moving perhaps quickly, maybe not so quickly, but they know that they want to leave a mark somehow. What advice do you have for them?
A couple of things for younger leaders, say.
Yeah.
The first advice is a brilliant lesson that Peter Drucker taught me. Now, as you mentioned, I got ranked #1 leadership thinker in the world. My intellect compared to his, that of a 10-year-old child. So he was so smart. He taught me so many things. And what I'm going to teach your listeners next is about 1/3 of my whole consulting practice in 10 minutes. Are you ready?
Ready.
Lesson #1 from Peter Drucker: every decision in the world is made by the person who has the power to make the decision. Make peace with that. #2, our mission in life is to make a positive difference, not to prove we're smart, not to prove we're right. And #3, if I need to influence you and you have the power to make the decision, there's one word to describe you, it's called customer. This one word to describe me is called salesperson. You don't have to buy, I have to sell. In life, you sell what you can sell, you change what you can change. If you can change it, you change it. If you can sell it, you sell it. You can't sell it, you can't change it, let it go.
Let it go.
Don't waste your life on stuff you can't change. Put your time and energy on what you can change. And my daughter and I have done some research on vicarious living does not lead to a happy life. Don't waste your life on Donald Trump or Kim Kardashian or the sport team. They don't care about you. You want to have a great life? How can you make a positive difference? If you're not going to make a positive difference, why spend time on stuff? So focus on what you can do, not what you're not going to change. Well, when you're a young leader, you need to learn this lesson, because many young leaders don't ever get it. They get lost in logic, rationality, proving how smart they are, proving how right they are. And they forget we're not here on earth to do that. We're here on earth to make a positive difference. And It's hard. Why is this so hard? Because in our lives, we've taken test after test after test, thousands of tests with one goal. We had to prove how smart we were. It's hard to stop. Thousands of times you've been tested. Thousands of times you had to prove how smart you are. Thousands of times when you proved how smart you are, people went, hooray, good for you. And if you fail, very bad.
Right.
This is very deeply ingrained. One of the great leaders I've ever met said, for the great achiever, it's all about me. For the great leader, it's all about them. It's very hard to make this transition from a great achiever to a great leader.
So, Marshall, part of what I love about your feed forward process is it is probably one of the most pragmatic processes, I think, for helping people maybe begin that transition process, because you have to think past yourself.
Right. I love Feed Forward. It's a very positive, upbeat way. It's kind of the centerpiece of my coaching and leadership development. And in Feed Forward, you're asked to ask for input. You listen to it. You don't promise to do everything, and you thank people. And you don't punish the messenger. So you get in the habit of saying, how can I be a better? And one thing I'm proud of in Minneapolis is Best Buy. They have people doing this throughout the organization on a regular basis now.
Wow.
Thousands of people do this. Well, they learned it from their CEO. And, you do feed forward. How can I be a better store manager? How can I be a better coach, a better parent, friend? How can I be better? And you learn to listen to people. You don't promise to do everything. Leadership's not a popularity contest. You do promise to listen to everybody, though, and do what you can. And it's a very powerful process which works around the world. So the feed forward exercise, which I do in groups where you have people pair up and then they go and talk to each other. I did that in Moscow in November with 20,000 people in the Olympic Stadium. 20,000.
Oh, wow.
And only 20% spoke English.
Wow.
They loved it.
Yeah.
So I had 20,000 people do this at once.
You know, what I love about it is I do a lot of work globally, so transculturally. And one of the things that I realize is how global business, we tend to use English, right? But it's not the native language for most of the people who are going to be present.
Right.
And Feed Forward takes some of that pressure of language out of the process, because it's looking at what is it that I can do to improve, and you're doing it one by one, right? You can take that in and you can process that. And
when I worked in Russia, they did it in Russian.
yes.
I mean, I didn't need to hear everything everyone was saying.
Right.
Although I spoke English and had a translator, the exercise itself was all done in Russian.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Brilliant. So, Marshall, our time is almost up, and I have one more question that I really want to ask of you, and that is, what is one thing in your life for which you are grateful for that has really shaped who you are?
I would say one thing in my life I'm really grateful for is great teachers.
Wow.
In my life, my heroes have been great, kind, and generous teachers. Peter Drucker, Paul Hersey, Alan Mulally, Jim Kim, Francis Hesselbein, Richard Beckhardt, wonderful people who went out of their way to help me. And what I'm doing, as you know, as I've grown older, is I'm basically adopting people. I teach them all I know for free, and my goal is to try to help them in a kind of sign of recognition for all of the nice people that helped me. And the only price of me helping them is they have to do the same thing.
I just wanted to pause for a moment, because I've heard you talk about what you're grateful for before in teachers. What I didn't get was the two adjectives that you used, which was kind and generous. You know,
Right.
Generally when we speak of great teachers, we think of motivating teachers, charismatic teachers. And neither one of those words are in your descriptor of your teachers. It's kind and generous.
Right.
To me, that the distinction is those are people who really give back. It's what we can take in as people at a feeling level, and it's at the feeling level we're transformed, basically.
And the one thing I was very happy with is in the documentary, many people were interviewed about me, and they were asked what word would describe me, and by far the most common word was generous.
Yeah. One last thought you would like to leave with our audience before we close this interview, Marshall?
Take a deep breath. Imagine you're 95 years old and you're going to die. But right before you die, you're given a beautiful gift, the ability to go back in life and talk to the person who's listening to me right now. What advice would that wise old you have for the you that's listening to me right now? Whatever you're thinking now, do that. In terms of performance appraisal, that's all that matters. Back to legacy, that's all that matters. If that old person says, you did the right thing, you did. And if that old person says you made a mistake, you did. Some friends of mine interviewed old people, and the answers come out in 3 groups. Number 1, be happy now. Not next week, not next month, not next year. Be happy now. Great Western disease, I'll be happy when I get the money, status, and BMW. We all have the same when. Number 2 is do whatever you can do to help people. Not because of status or money, but because the 95-year-old you will be proud of you because you did. And then finally, go for it. If you have a dream, go for it. Because you don't go for it when you're 40, you may not when you're 80. Old people, we never regret the risk we take and fail. We always regret the risk we fail to take. So finally, thank you.
Marshall, thank you so much. You have been just incredible. And this has been a gift to me, and I know to the audience. And I just look forward to so much more with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.